So for this design, we're going to use the gel paints to create this beautiful flowers. They're going to give you a slight 3D effect as well, which is really nice. And we're going to do this over an ombre background, which I'm going to do with pigments. So we've covered ombres before, and it's one of the easiest things to do with our pigments, because what you need to do, or the secret behind that, is literally to layer. You can see I've placed a light shade at the top of the nail because obviously it's going to grow out. We're actually using the Chameleon Collection Reptile Red for that very top area near the cuticle. And then I'm using Lilac from the Pretty collection, and then we're going to use Flip Flop from the Bright collection. You can see here I'm layering those nails, I'm layering the pigments right up so that we have this beautiful soft ombre from light to dark. I'm actually going to add a little bit more pigment here because you can see that I had that line. I really am a fickler. If you've ever been on one of my classes, you'll know I do not like to see a line in an ombre. An ombre is meant to be a very soft gradient from one shade to another, not one color to another, one shade to another. So I've done all this over a very soft pink. A lot of the nails or ombres I've done with the pigments in the past have been on white background. And I just wanted to show you that you don't have to put it on a white background. And you could even put it on a clear nail as well, because the pigments are very, very pigmented and very strong. So what am I doing here now? I'm actually applying a base coat. And the reason why I'm applying a base coat is because I want to protect the pigment. I'm going to use gel, which means I'm going to be pressing through and I'm going to end up disturbing that pigment layer. So using a base coat is really great because it gives me a perfect surface to work off, and then it allows me to apply a top coat later on should I need to, and that top coat is going to adhere to that base coat. But what I am going to do is I'm going to just buff this surface up very, very quickly because I want to create a good grip to the surface of the nail. Another option you could do is use a matte top coat, and to be honest with you, that's probably my preferred choice, is applying a matte top coat, wiping, and then you've got that perfect base, so you probably don't need to then go ahead and buff. So I'm digressing. I'm moving on now, and I'm using our gel paints. This is the Be Creative gel paints. They're not like gel. I have to tell you, it does all the benefits of a gel. However, you need to use it like paints. They are so highly, highly pigmented. What you don't want to do is think to yourself, oh, well, don't worry, I'll do this effect with gel polish. The problem is gel polish naturally self-levels. That's why we love gel polish so much. Every time you work with gel polish, you will end up having to place one petal and then put it under the light, and then another petal and put it under the light. And then of course, it's not time effective. You're actually wanting to have paint that's going to stay exactly where it is, that doesn't dry. Hey presto, we have gel paint. So what we have here is a paint that never dries until you're ready for it to dry. It just so happens that it also leaves an inhibition layer too, which is fabulous if you want to apply pigment over the top. So you've got to understand that when you're using our gel paints, you do not want to use it like you would normally use gel. You use it like you would paint. The joy of this is that you can manipulate and move your paint because it never dries. It'll only ever dry until you put it under the lamp. So you can see what I'm doing here. I'm creating very simple petal shapes, and I'm just creating these 3 petal shapes. What I want to do is create a flower that's almost 3D, and we're going to create a little illusion by adding the petal that's nearest us in a different direction, so we only see the back of that petal, but I'm getting ahead of myself. So what I'm doing here is I'm just pulling off some of the gel paint off onto my brush, and then I'm going to place this underneath my lamp. Now The gel actually is LED curable, so it will sit under the lamp and I cure it for 90 seconds. That's 3 lots of 30 seconds. So once that's cured, I can apply a second layer of gel paint. But can you see how I'm creating the petal? Not like I've created it before. What I'm doing is I'm folding that petal up and over the center of the flower. Now you can see it almost looks 3D. And when we finish off and place the paint in the middle of the flower, you will see what a difference it will make. Now this is amazing because I'm doing this with gel and I've cured that first layer, those 3 petals that I've already applied. They're not moving. So it doesn't matter what I do. If I make a mistake right now, I could wipe the whole thing off and then I could reapply and I would never disturb that first layer. That's what I love about the gel paints. So really what you can do is you can apply to your heart's content and never fear that you'll ever ruin what you've previously done. Now we're doing exactly the same again, and we're going to do a smaller flower. But now look at what I'm doing. Because it's a smaller flower, I can use the width of my brush. I'm placing the petal down and then I'm pressing it out, so I'm creating the depth with the width of my brush. And then what I'm going to do here, rather than curing this, because I want to show you how long or how far I can actually take the gel without having to cure it underneath the lamp. I could probably do 2 or 3 nails before I need to cure because it doesn't go anywhere. And see how even that first petal, I haven't cured that, that's still sat there. So I'm creating exactly the same flower again. I'm using a little dappen dish here with some cleanser in a sponge just to remove some of this gel that I don't need. And then I'm going to pop all this underneath the lamp to cure. Now, if you don't have an LED light, you can use UV. Actually, I prefer to use UV when I'm using the gel paint. Normally, I use UV when I use the black, because the black is so highly pigmented. Actually, the light struggles to penetrate through. But with white, there's no problem at all if you just cure it 3 times. So 90 seconds under LED is the perfect cure. So what's left to do? We're now going to literally use our brush to create leaves. See how I press down with my brush? Pressing right down, and then I'm using the edge of my brush just to come along and create a beautiful leaf. I don't want you to spend too long having to fiddle and worry about this. Really utilize the paint and allow the colors behind to show through so that you have an almost transparent effect. See how I'm twisting and rolling my brush, lifting it up so that we create a point. We're going to do another leaf in a minute at the top of the nail, and then we will be done. I lie to you, we won't, because we have to do the finishing touches, which of course really make all the difference with any of these nails. Pop this under the lamp, and then we're going to carry on and we're going to do a 3rd and 4th leaf and some swirls. So we use the tip of my brush and we're going to come down and press down. Look how I'm pressing with the brush all the way down and then lifting it back up again to create the point. So I'm using my brush to create the effects that I want. So I'm not applying it and then brushing it out. I'm actually using the brush, pressing the brush and twisting the brush down so that it gives me the effect I want. Now I'm using a dappen dish with a small sponge inside, and then I've just literally soaked the sponge with cleanser. I find it's the best way of keeping my brush clean, and it's the quickest way when I'm in the middle of working, because what it does is it just means that I can wipe my brush without having to remove my hand from the client or remove my hand from the nails tips that I'm using. And you're literally just rolling the brush into the dappen dish with cleanser, and then you must just dry that brush off onto a paper towel. It is the easiest thing to do when you're actually doing any form of gel art. rather than trying to wipe it on a dry paper. Because of course you and I know if you wipe it on paper, you're always going to pick up lint. Doesn't matter if it's lint free or not. So all we're going to do now is use our gel and just add some tiny little dots. And now we're going to add the dots with the nail art pen, only because it gives us the perfect dots. The nail art pen seems to hold the gel beautifully. And once you're done, you just need to cure. So here we are, we're going to add those little fine details. So I'm using the Be Creative acrylic paint. They're very highly pigmented, which means that they're going to sit really well over the top of any inhibition layer. Most paints that you use sometimes will not sit over the top of an inhibition layer. You'll find that it doesn't adhere or stick to it. And the reason why is because there's more water in there than needs to be. We don't have a high consistency of water. We have a lot more pigment and a lot more of the medium which binds that pigment together. What I'm going to do is just highlight or accentuate the center of each of the flowers with a similar color to the background. And you can see that I use the tip of my brush just to blend out and create fine lines. Now I'm using yellow here, and I'm using it quite watered down. So I'm adding water to it, and you can see how I'm watering it down and having it blended into that purple center part. So that's going to give us the warmth to the edges of our flowers. I'm not so worried about how much this is showing. I just want to create a little bit of depth to the flowers. And you'll see right at the very end what a massive difference this makes. And then finally, all we need to do is add some more dots. Now, dots really do make any flower design come alive. I don't know what it is, but you need to add dots to any flower and then it just works, especially if you've got dots in the background. If you have dots in the background, you need to have those dots mirrored within the flower, because obviously they've got to have come from somewhere. So I'm going to add a little bit of gold here now to the dots, and we're layering the yellow, the gold and the white dots, and you'll see that we'll have those layered. And then that, my friends, is it. All you need to do after this is done is top coat your design and you're good to go. Now I hope you've enjoyed having a little look at what we can do with the gel paints. I will be bringing you some more designs this year with the gel paints, but this really is one of those designs which you can turn your hand to quite easily in the salon. Please do remember to post your designs online on our Facebook group. We would love to see them, and I look forward to any of your questions if you need to just drop me a message on the Facebook group.